Good? Good. Good morning, everyone. In the local tradition that I learned yesterday, in which we present our speakers with the full CV of 5 pages, including mentioning their kindergarten experience and going all the way through high school, I am pleased to introduce the first talk of this morning, Dr. Yair Sadaka. Please.
Thank you. So it was Hadassah. This is the name of my kindergarten teacher. So Hadassah, this is her name. So thank you very much for being here, and I feel kind of proud to stand in this before this audience. And what I'll try to do today, after the brilliant talks we've heard yesterday, is to give you a kind of a different angle. I'm a clinician, so I'm a pediatrician. I'm a child development specialist. I'm working on a daily basis in a clinic. I'm working as a pediatrician. I'm the head of a child developmental center in the southern part of Israel, in Beersheba, that belongs to the Ministry of Health. And I belong to, I belong to Brookdale Institute as well. So this is the dichotomy. I'm living in a dichotomy between my clinical life and big data science. And I would like to take you to a journey I have had throughout the last more or less 15 years in trying to kind of to bridge between these fields of interest that I have, and hopefully you find it interesting. So, oops. Okay, so there are many different partners to what I'm going to show you today. Some of them are here. There is, I guess, some others that I forgot, and it is not something that I'm going to show that I have done by myself. And my journey started, I think, more or less 15 years ago. I was a fellow at Sick Kids Toronto. It was my third year of fellowship, and I understood that it is going to be end. I've already had a kind of a small grant, and I had a research team that I was working in, and I knew that I'm going to go back to Sadaka Medical Center. This is Sadaka Medical Center in the southern part of Israel, and I understood that things are going to be different. So no protected time for research, and no team in order to do research. You are going to be there by your own. And I didn't know how I'll be able to combine between my clinical life and between research. So I was trying to think about the advantages that I'll find in Israel that won't be found in Toronto. And I think, as you've seen yesterday, there are some advantages in Israel. Israel has a very strong public healthcare system with huge data sets. Israel has a very strong public education system. Some of you will laugh, but still, we are all here, and most of us have came from this strong public education system. And we have also a strong welfare system. Each one of these systems contains a data set, which is kind of interesting. And throughout the 15 years since I came back from Sick Kids and till today, I think it was a kind of a journey in order to get to know these data sets and to understand a bit better how to access these data sets and to understand what we can do with these data sets. So I'll try to kind of map the different data sets or the different data centers that you'll find in Israel. You'll find it over here. We have several data centers. Most of them are not interact one with each other. However, it is feasible in some cases to kind of bridge these data centers. One belongs to the Ministry of Health. It's called Timna, a data center that contains data sets that belong to the Ministry of Health. The second one is the data set of the HMO, which you have seen yesterday by the brilliant talk of Ran and Noah. And the third belongs to the CBS, which contains a lot of information which is not healthcare data, but still I think you will see it is kind of interesting. And if we'll kind of dive into these data sets, let's start with the data center, of the Ministry of Health. You'll find over there kind of interesting data sets. And for example, this is a data set that belongs to the well baby clinics in Israel. Well baby clinic, what we call Tipat Chalav, something that came from France, actually, 100 years ago. Each and every child in Israel is entitled to a well baby care clinic, which has been run by trained nurses. And all children in Israel attending this, almost all, it is 95% and above, 95% of the children in Israel attend these clinics routinely until the age of 2.5 years. It is open until the age of 6 years, but when you are 2.5 years, the numbers are dropped. And these clinics are well-being clinics, so it means that there is a surveillance that has been done for all the kids, and there is vaccination, so on and so forth. However, there is also a specific EMR that was built specifically for these clinics, where all information is gathered from the parents and family about each and every child. So you have data regarding the growth, the development, the depression scale of the mother. You have some blood counts. You have some socio-demographic information. And you have detailed information regarding pregnancy and delivery. So this is a huge amount of data that is open for all the children in Israel. And it has been run since 2005, more or less. However, it is kind of with a very good data since 2014 to 2024. Actually, now we have received the 2025. It contains the data of, although almost all children in Israel attend these clinics, these data sets contain only 70% more or less, or 65% more or less, because some of the kids will be seen with a different EMRs. However, this is a representative data of all the population in Israel. So this is only one example, and I've gave some more details about this data set specifically, because we are going to speak today about development. So it is very important to me that you'll get to know it. But as you can see, there are many other different data sets that you'll find within this team data center, and all these data sets interact one with each other. Since in Israel we have a single ID, and it means that each and every data set can speak with the other, at least if you are in the same data center, okay? So you have many others. I'm not going to open it, only when I'll give specific examples. So the second one belongs to the HMOs, and yesterday you have seen an amazing example of what the HMOs have in their data set. The biggest one belongs to the Clalit, and it is an inpatient, outpatient for the last 20 to 30 years. 60% of the population in Israel, representative population of all the children in Israel, very enriched data that has been collected for many years with a very nice cohort, and you have seen already what you can do with this kind of a data. Last but not least, I would like to show you also the data set of the CBS. Once again, the data center, very kind of an extensive data sets that we have an access to in Israel. And what's nice about this data set is that you have a kind of let's say a cohort of a child which from the day he was born for the last 50 years, more or less, in that some of the data sets that within this data center. And you can follow the child throughout his entire life. So you can see his achievements. For example, the grades he will get in 5th grade. You can see what will happen when he'll finish high school and what are the grades in the final exam of high school. You'll be able to see his achievements in academy. So there's psychometric test and the highest degree he's achieved. And on top of that, eventually when he'll go and start working, you'll have also a data regarding his salary. So you can follow, a child from the day he was born, more or less, till adulthood, and to see the achievements he've kind of had throughout his life. And on top of that, you can see environmental factors and life circumstances. So it means to what environment he was born to, the parents' income, demographic characteristics, place of residency. So, and on top of that, you'll know what happened with his peers, in his class peers, and you'll know also to some extent whether he have or not disabilities. These are not disabilities that are coming from the HMOs or from the Ministry of Health. These are disabilities that are being collected from the Ministry of Education. If you are entitled to any kind of aid in school, so you'll get kind of a tag that you are with a disability, with a specific disability, and then you are entitled to specific rights. So we have also this information. Yes.
Does this include national insurance?
Very good question, and quite delicate. So I would say usually not, but I will show you some examples where it was feasible to kind of interconnect data of the national insurance with with other data sets. So
And
it
we
is,
are working on it. Like
Yeah.
that's part of our effort now with all the government ministries, and we have all the director generals sitting on the board of Brookdale, all the 5 of them, and one of the major efforts is to bring all these data sets together.
so Brookdale, Michal from Brookdale. So these are the data sets that are being presented in Israel, and the access to these data sets was built quite, I will say slowly, but dramatically, and it is currently happening. So we can access the different data sets. It doesn't mean that we always can interconnect different data centers. This is a huge problem, but once again, at times feasible, because what's nice about Brookdale Institute is that it is a bridge between the data and the policymakers, and it is being built to support the policymakers, so they have the, how would I say, they have the will to let us access these data sets for supporting policy. So, okay.
Maybe two specific questions.
If it is.
I mean, there are a few years that those kids are going to the army.
And this is a black box currently, although once again, what we are doing in the last, just one second, Michal will also answer, but we are kind of, this is kind of a mission we took. So we are trying now to bridge to intersect each and every data sets into this kind of, so the policymakers will know that once they receive any kind of a decision which is based on data, is based on the strongest data we can achieve, and it is a working process. We are going to meet it, I think, in the next 2 weeks. So this is the army.
We have with the army. We've already reached out and.
Okay, so let's continue. But what we can do with this kind of data, and once again, I remind you that we are speaking about child development, pediatrician, so this is me. So what can we do with this data? So let me start with developmental surveillance. Developmental surveillance, it sounds kind of funny to say that we can do something for developmental surveillance. For the last, I think it was Darwin that was the first one to kind of develop developmental surveillance many years ago, and there are so many tools in terms of developmental surveillance. So what can we add to what is already happening? So remember, I've told you about the Tipat Chalav, the data set of Well Baby Clinic, and remember that I've told you that we are collecting data regarding growth and development. Now, imagine that you collect data about development from different domains, so fine motor, gross motor, language, and social domains. So you collect information regarding milestones. You also collect information regarding nurse concern or parental concerns about development. So a lot of data, and you do that on more or less 1 million kids, and you have developmental assessments of 5 million developmental assessments. Now, we have done the surveillance in Tipat Chalav based on surveillance scales that you'll find in any pediatric book. However, these pediatric books, these tables that you'll find that child should start walking at the age of 1 year, let's say, or start talking at the age of 1 year, they have been built either on very small samples, or they have been from expert opinion or things like that. And this is what we have been using in Israel in order to say whether it is good or not. But you have so many cases that you have actually evaluated. So what you can do is to look at kids that we are screening for 60 different milestones at the Tipat Chalav. So you can take one milestone, grasp an object, this is it, and you can see what will happen if you come when you are 3 months of age. And you'll see that more or less 65% of the children will be able to do it, will succeed. If they will come when they are 4 months of age, you will see that it is 90%. And if they will come when they are 5 months of age, it is already 95% of the children that will be able to do that. So now we have kind of a norm for one milestone. But you can do that for the entire 60 milestones. And then you'll have what we call Tipat Chalav Israeli Surveillance Scale. This is a scale that kind of combine all the norms we have developed for each and every milestone. This is not a rocket science, right? This is so simple. However, this is something which is truly powerful, because this is the first case this is the first time where there is a national survey of 60 milestones, and you have a scale which was very, how would I say it, precise in the way we have developed it. So, So since it was kind of new, and in 3 months prior, the CBC and the AAP, have just published a paper regarding the need of this kind of surveillance scales, which will be more precise and will be evidence-based. It kind of drew an attention. But this is only drawing an attention. And I remind you that I'm a clinician. So my intention is not to make articles. My intentions are to implement these kind of tools into the clinic. So can we implement it into the clinic? It is so obvious that you need to put it in the clinic, right? Obvious, but as yesterday, once again, as Ran and Noef mentioned yesterday, this is kind of a challenge. So you have a publication, but you need to make it happen in different clinics. So this is the next stage, and this is the Ministry of Health publishing that this is what needs to be done. 1.5 years after we have published the paper, it came eventually. But once again, since this is norms that have been developed in Israel for the entire population of Israel, more or less, then it makes sense to use that. So is it a win? Not yet. It doesn't mean, the fact that the Ministry of Health want us to use these tools doesn't mean that each and every nurse in each and every clinic will actually use it. So the next step was to implement it into the EMRs of the nurses that we've just talked about in the Well Baby Clinic. So currently, if you will come and you are in the 95% of a specific milestone, you'll be flagged. Is it enough? No, you need to do other things because you want it to be a bit more reliable. So you would like that all the nurses will do it in the same manner. And we have seen that pediatricians also want to have it. And we've seen that even pediatric neurologists want to use it. So we wanted to have it, outside. So we have this kind of a scale that if you go to pediatric clinics, you'll find it in pediatric clinics in many places. And it was translated to Hebrew, Arabic, Spanish, English, and so on and so forth. And we've also kind of developed a booklet. So each and every one who is actually doing this surveillance will do it in the same manner, so it will be a bit more reliable. And then it starts being truly in use. So this is a booklet. You can see that even you have a small barcode that you can kind of scan in order to see how actually you need to examine a specific milestone, and I'll show you what will happen if you scan the barcode. So it is in Hebrew, but it is this is the milestone, whether you are following an object, and it actually explains how to do it. And what is a success. Okay, you understood. So I guess this is an example for a success. But I'm going to show you that not everything is kind of a success. Sometimes you do kind of a nice research, but it will not penetrate into to actual policy, and it won't change. But this is a nice example of something we've been able to do with the Ministry of Health, with KI Research Institute, which I did not mention yet. So it is important to say because they are the data scientists that have done all this work. Okay, so this is when you are thinking on one specific child. This is when you would try to focus on what is happening with one specific child. But if you have this kind of data, you can look at the entire population of Israel. You can use these kind of scales in macro, in terms of designing policy, not just to see what is happening with a specific child, but to see what is happening with the entire population. And this is kind of a national developmental report that we are trying to publish each 2 years. And this is the first one. We currently just published the second one, where you can see that you can track the amount of children that fail specific domains of milestones. So how many children do each and every year from the year 2016 to 2020, in each year, how many children fail in the language domain, how many children will fail in the social domain, so on and so forth, and you can follow it throughout the years. And this is what you'll see when you are looking nationally. So look, and I think that this is kind of nice because you can see that throughout the years there are more and more failure in a macro, specifically in all of the domains, but you'll see that it is kind of strong in language and social domains. And this is interesting because sometimes we are asking ourselves whether now you know that there are more and more children that has a diagnosis of autism, and usually we are kind of asking ourselves whether it is only awareness or is it a change in the way we diagnose ASD in the DSM. So you can see that, yes, definitely, I totally agree that this is a part of the picture, but there is another part of the picture.
Kind of plateau or even drop down.
This one?
The last one, the last year.
Yeah, this is kind of nice. Now, I won't discuss this one. I would like to discuss this one. Look, this is kind of I'll discuss also this one. But you see that children are failing more and more throughout the years. However, the parental concern, it looks like it is going down. So this is kind of interesting. And I'm trying to think whether it was not the corona yet over here. I don't want to say things that I'm not kind of, it is not in my mind, so I'm sorry, I'm not going to. Okay, I don't remember whether it is part of the corona or not. Okay, but once again, once you have this data set, you can put it into a dashboard, and this is a national dashboard that belongs to the Ministry of Health, and currently if you go to this dashboard, and we can do it, so you'll be able to find this kind of data, not just nationally, because you can break it also to specific subgroups based on ethnicity, socioeconomic status, place of residency, family characteristic, and so on and so forth. And you can see that there is a lot of data that you can extract from this kind of report. Okay, even, so a lot of data, and this is currently, this was implemented into the site of the Ministry of Health. So let's see how I'm going back to here. Okay, so this is another dashboard that we have built not only nationally, but we also have built a dashboard which is specifically for each and every municipality. So because we've seen that policymakers are not just on a national basis. Some of the policymakers are the ones throughout the municipality, so we wanted to have for them a specific dashboard, so they will be able to kind of examine different way of interventions based on the data that is related to their specific municipality. Okay, so once again, I think that this is an example where we have made kind of a success because this data was accepted by the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education, and they are kind of eager to have the new reports because it serves them as a base of policy and intervention. So this is kind of nice, and I think once again we had a success. But I want you to see also challenges. So this is another thing we wanted to do, and we've asked ourselves. Currently, we are doing developmental surveillance for boys and girls in the same scale. And if I'll ask you here in the crowd, who is developing faster, boys or girls? What is the girls? What do you think? Girls. So all of us, each and every parent, each and every grandmother will tell you that, girls are developing a bit faster. It doesn't mean that they will be smarter, maybe they are. But the only thing is that that at the beginning, girls are faster, but still we are using the same scale for boys and for girls, which is kind of weird if you think about it. When you are measuring height or weight or head circumference, you use different scales, but when you are measuring development, you are using the same scale. Does it make sense? When all of us know, this is a common knowledge, that we know that girls are doing a bit better. So we have evaluated that. Since you have the huge amount of data, you can evaluate that, and you can see that if you are going to take only these children that are eventually will develop well, and if you are going to take only those that have no significant risks for mild development, you'll still see that each and in most of the milestones, you'll see that the girls are achieving a bit faster than boys. So it makes sense to have a different set of scales for boys and for girls. And if you'll take, a specific scale and you'll measure girls, for example, you'll understand that you have missed 20% of the girls that if you are combining a single scale, you say they are okay. But when you compare them to girls, they are slower than the girls. And if you are going to take boys and to see whether they are doing well or not, you'll see that 6% of the kids, of the boys, you will say that they are developmentally delayed, but they are not delayed, they are just boys. So you understand that it makes sense to use different surveillance scales. However, here, it did not penetrate yet to policy. So I'm kind of curious if you have any kind of ideas how we can make it a bit, stronger, because this is one study, huge study, but if we'll be able to kind of convince policymakers that this is the road to go, then we'll be able to be the first one in the world to do kind of a different surveillance for boys and for girls.
You have 60 milestones.
Yeah.
Maybe there are only 6 that are important and make the maximal difference between boys and girls, and will be much easier to implement this, saying this is the 2 things that you have to look at, rather than 60, which is a nightmare and no one wants to touch it.
No, I totally agree, but the only thing to do is to use a different scale. I can give you one which belongs to boys and one belongs to girls, can implement it in the EMR. The problem is that it is not the problem of, it is not complicated. The problem is to be the first one in the world who are doing different surveillance for boys and for girls. This is kind of a change in policy that you need to be very bold to do it. So if we
scientifically, what I'm asking is whether out of the 60, is it true that there are only 5 that
social and
difference?
language. Social and language are a bit more,
something like that.
They are a bit more strong, yeah.
Like, what are you doing with it in the future? Like, I suppose you're trying to do it, to do screening.
Yeah.
Like, can you tell if, say, these 20% end up actually having, say, I don't know, high school data you said, like end up actually being delayed, or maybe that's not a...
I have an answer for it later on in the talk, but I will say that there is a difference between surveillance and screening. Surveillance means I would like to follow a child throughout his life, and I would like, let's say, if you go to your kid and he's in the 2nd grade and he's not doing well in math, it doesn't mean that he will be a disaster in math when he'll be in the university, but you will still want to help him in math when he's in the 2nd grade. So this is surveillance. Surveillance doesn't mean that you are going to point these children that are going to be delayed. I will show you several examples of how you can use it as a screening tool or a prediction model. But here it is just surveillance. So in terms of surveillance, you would like to say, should the nurse talk with the parents regarding how you can encourage language or whatever? Sometimes you tell the parents, look, your child is being delayed and you are just giving a stress which has no meaning at all and there is no need for further intervention. So this is kind of a difference between surveillance and screening.
So I'm confused.
Yeah.
What is the clinical implication of those making this right? Let's suppose I could do this tomorrow, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
What would improve in the development of Israeli children because we go ahead and do this change?
So once again, the answer is, I'll break this answer to 2, the surveillance scale and the screening tools. And we are using the same, you'll see in a minute that we are using the same scale for surveillance and for screening. Currently, the policy in Israel is once you are in the 95% of the, if you are failing something that 95% of the children are doing, you are going to be referred to pediatrician. Now, it means first, stress, if it is unneeded. It is a significant stress because I'm going to tell you, look, your child is not doing well. So a stress. Second, you are going to come to pediatric clinic. I'm busy. And the pediatrician, what he will do, well, you are delayed, go to child development center. Go to child development center in 2 years, as you have said. So it is dramatic. If
So I understand how you are talking about the false alerts and why you want to reduce them. I'm asking about the right-hand side of the equation. Is there any benefit for knowing about clinical benefit of getting 20% more of the parents of girls more worried?
If we assume that surveillance is important in order to kind of give not just referral to pediatrics, but also to train the parents, the families within the well baby clinic, and this is what we are trying to do, then it makes sense to at least know and to give the instructions to parents who actually need. And once again, it is like mathematics in the second grade. Does it make sense to invest so much effort in order to teach your boy mathematics in the second grade? I don't know. You can see whether it predicts that you'll do better when you'll be in the university. I'm not sure. But we are doing it. We are doing it because we believe this is the idea of surveillance. Surveillance means I'm not going to wait until, I'm not screening what are the chances that you'll do wrong, but I would like to help you because, the brain is plastic very early. You can intervene and make it better. It is mapping the challenges and the abilities of each and every child and help him just achieve a bit more. Yeah.
Talk about the break.
Yeah, okay. But I kind of wonder whether it would be feasible and possible to implement it in the Israeli healthcare system. We'll see. This is kind of a challenge. Next is transients, and this is a question that we've just been asking. Transient versus persistent developmental delay. So think about it. Once your child is falling in a specific milestone, does it mean that it's going to be delayed later on? If you take the entire, so this is the differentiating transient from persistent developmental delays. This is the idea to try. It is kind of speaks with the things you have just asked me earlier on. Can we actually predict which of the children are going to be with a transient delay? You need to do nothing and it will pass, or children with a more persistent delay that you need to actually intervene a bit more seriously, or at least watch them a bit more closely in order to know whether they are doing good or not. So we took a study cohort. Once again, we have so many children in the well baby clinic. So we took 500,000 kids. And we've seen that 38%, or as 38,000, of the children have failed in one or another milestone. And around 90% of these kids have a follow-up clinic in the next year. And I wanted to see whether they have a higher chances, or who will fail in the second year. Okay, so this is the cohort, and you can see that only 20 to 30% have failed in the second year. So it means most of us, although we have failed one developmental milestones, we are not delayed. It is just a matter of maturity, let's say. So, yes.
Are there a significant number of new failures who weren't in the original 38,000 but then failed?
Yeah.
So, okay. And is it more new failures than sort of repeat?
I will not know to answer that question. I'll have to look at the data, but definitely, yeah. So this is the cohort. So we can see this is the 38,000, and those are the ones that were followed in the next year. You can see that only 20 to 30% have failed in the next year. So can we predict who will fail in the next year? Can we make a kind of an assumption to know where should we invest our time and where we should give a bit more efforts and where we should just kind of say, okay, some kind of instructions to the parents and that's it. So you can do all the magics that data scientists are doing and build these kind of prediction models and to show that you can have a different type of models, and I'm not going to get into the difference of these data sets, but these models for each and every domain of milestones, but you can see that you can do something with it, which is kind of nice. It is nice, but once again, if you would like to use it in a clinic, how am I going to use that in a clinic? What am I going to do with that? It is only if I'm going to put it into an EMR, but it is not something that you can use on a daily basis. And if I would like to use it on a daily basis, maybe I can use kind of different rules that will make it a bit more easier for me to know whether there is a risk or not. And this is the rule of 2 and the rule of 3. The rule of 2 means that if you have failed in 2 different domains, you have higher chances of having a failure in the next year. And if you have fed free domains, you have failure in free domains, you have much, much higher risk for another failure. And once again, this is a common knowledge for all of us. Like we all say that boys are developing a bit slower than girls. So this is common knowledge, but now this common knowledge can come with a kind of a study that shows that this is a nice way to go. So if you would like to know whether a child is in a bit more risk or not, if he's not doing well only in one domain, most likely he's going to do well. If he's not doing good in 3 domains, this is the rule of 3. You can see it is highly, highly specific. Not sensitive, but highly specific. Okay. Last but not least, can we predict which of the child is going to have autism? So once again, we have huge amount of data regarding all the children in Israel. So it is, and this data is being collected very early from birth to 2.5 years, quite precisely, and later on a bit less precisely. A lot of data. So maybe we can use it in order to know which of the children is going to develop autism. Nice. Problem is that we don't have the outcome in this data set. We do not know which of the children will eventually develop autism and which will not. So this is kind of a problem. You cannot build a prediction model when you don't have the outcome. So as I've said, it is important to be able to interconnect different data sets, and you have asked about integrating data from national insurance, and this is a case where we have been able to interconnect data from the Well Baby Clinic and the national insurance. National insurance in Israel, you need to know that in Israel, each and every child, regardless of the functioning of his condition, if he's been diagnosed with ASD, with autism, he's entitled to $1,200 a month. And this is something that once a child has been diagnosed, 98% of the families will go and ask for this stipend. So the national insurance has kind of a cohort of all the children in Israel that have been diagnosed with autism. If you combine this data set with the data set of the Well Baby Clinic, you'll be able to have the outcome for the data that is being collected in the Well Baby Clinic. And this is kind of nice, and you can build different kind of models in order to see whether you'll be able to predict which of the children will have autism. And they are different by the fact of how much data we are collecting from the Well Baby Clinic. So are we going to use all the entire data from all the visits that you have had and everything that is related to the family? Or will we want to take only a snapshot, one visit once, and only using the developmental data together with the sex, boys or girls, and the mother's age, that's it. So if you have only this information, how precise you'll be, and eventually it is quite precise even if you use kind of a bit narrowed model, which makes it a bit more transferable, although we didn't check whether it's transferable or not. But now we have a prediction model. We have a prediction model that helps us identify each and every child in Israel regarding his risk for developing autism. Nice, right? Wrong. What will we do with that? Remember that we are working in Israel in a quite stretched public healthcare system. As Ranev said, to come to my center, it will take you between 12 months to 24 months. Now think that you are going to bring into my clinic children at risk when they are only 1.5 years old and they are in risk for developing autism. What will I do with them? Sometimes they do not have any symptoms regarding autism currently because it is a prediction model. It is not a model that shows me what is happening currently and now. So what will I do with these children? I'm going to take this stretched public healthcare system and put on top of it, many other children in much younger age, which we're going to kind of flood what we are currently doing in Israel. So what are we doing? Does it make sense to make this kind of a model? So it is not that we have been ignorant to this fact. We knew that this is what is going to happen. We knew that if we'll have a successful model, we won't be able to implement it in the Israeli healthcare system. So why did we do it? So we do it for that, the seed trial, and this is something we are currently starting with Brookdale, managing this project, and with the different ministries of Israel. So the SEEDS trial, this is a study of early effect of developmental support. We all know and we all say that early intervention is truly, truly important and very effective. We all are familiar with the fact that the plasticity is highest within the first 2 years of life. And it is something which is kind of a common knowledge. You'll read it in each and every article that relates to brain plasticity. And we truly, truly want to try and intervene as early as possible when the brain is plastic. But the problem is that if this is the biological opportunity, yeah, there is a bureaucratic barrier, and this is the bureaucratic barrier. When will we come to a formal diagnosis? Now, in Israel, you are not entitled to any kind of services unless you have a formal diagnosis. And you'll get a formal diagnosis when you are 3 years of age. So we kind of, more or less, so we're kind of missing this window of opportunities because we are looking for those children who have a formal diagnosis. But this is an opportunity. Once you have a prediction model, you can use this specific type of a kids that, no, I'll say it in a different way. We would like to move from reactive to proactive intervention, or identification and intervention. So think about it that we can utilize the Israeli specific universal screening or surveillance in the well-baby clinic in order to identify those children at risk. And if we know that, we'll be able to identify the risk, put you on a trial. This is a trial. This is an RCT trial where you can evaluate specifically different types of interventions that are feasible for national implementation. So you are going to choose the way you are going to intervene in these kids, which is regardless of their formal diagnosis. So I have a risk. I'll be able to put you in a different trial, RCT trial of intervention, and to actually evaluate the effect of this intervention and to see whether I'll be able to build an intervention which will be able to kind of utilized nationally. So, yeah.
Has anyone ever proven? Has anyone ever proven that autism is preventable with an early intervention?
This is a great question. I would argue and ask, why would you like to prevent autism? Is this your primary outcome?
Is it not?
Is it your primary outcome? We are speaking about neurodiversity. Some of the brilliant kids you'll see in the university are children that are people that are autistic.
Aren't you contradicting yourself? You just went and did an RCT.
I'm going to do an RCT, but my primary outcome will not be to prevent autism. My primary outcome will be to improve functioning. This is much more important for me, I think, than, I don't want to claim that that being autistic is something which I would like to prevent because it is a disease. Some of the brilliant people around us are autistic, and I don't see a problem with that. However, I do see a problem, and once again, this is something which some will argue with me. I do want to make each and every child, whether he's autistic or not, as highly functioning as possible. And this is something that we will less argue about, because functioning is much more important, and this is the primary outcome. Yeah.
One of the things that we have, one of the things we're doing at Brookdale is we're taking the Director General and Deputy Director General to a study tour every year in May, and we took them to this new center it's a partnership between Cornell and Columbia, and they're treating kids as early as possible, and they show you the evidence on, with the outcomes, with like some of the effect on giving them the intervention as early, like in the early as the first few months or like the first year, and or kids that are treating, and the idea is to being able to, like as parents and sometimes clinicians, many times we miss the signs until it's too late. So what Yair is showing is that algorithm, like as parents and clinicians, maybe we can't, but algorithm can identify, and that's, you're going to explain, right? So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to intervene on the people we know, that on the kids, babies, we think that will be at risk, but not based on diagnostics of parents, but of the algorithm.
And when we've been there, it was amazing. When we've been there, so one of the researchers, one brilliant researcher from Worcester, and she had shown us a video of early intervention of a child, which was very young, and they've shown you, how would they say it, a very intense intervention throughout the year, and she has shown us how he will improve gradually. So this is a video of one child, and each and every one of us clinicians that are working with children with autism understand that what it means. But you would ask and you would claim, okay, this is very nice, but we've been in one of the prestigious centers in New York, and you'll be able to kind of consume this kind of intervention only by few. And we are trying to ask whether there is a kind of a national program that you'll be able to implement nationally and to use, instruments or things that are actually, you can, I would say, you can actually use them, and not for only a small group that comes to Harvard University and being treated by the best, the best psychiatric and the best physicians, the best psychologic and so on. So you would like to see whether you have any kind of intervention that would be feasible to implement nationally, not just in Israel, in any other, in any other state or country that would like to have a public national intervention for autism. Okay, so this is what we are trying to do. And wow, so many questions.
What is the predictive value of your
A tough question.
What is there?
positive, whatever cut point you've decided upon, what is the sensitivity and the positive predictive value of your tool?
This is a great question. So it is based on the AUC and how you are going to cut and how many children you are going to actually have in each and every group. And this is something that we'll have to plan. We'll have to see how many children we'll need eventually in order to have enough children that will be with kind of difficulties, because you are completely right.
So you haven't chosen like a...
No, this is a work in progress. We have just developed and this is, we are going to have the first meeting of the steering committee in order to kind of decide what is the number of, what is the sample size and whatever and so on and so forth. So it is too early for me to give you an answer for that, but this is definitely something we're going to.
So I totally understand and agree with your framing on improving function, not prevention. But given that framing, and maybe I missed something in exactly how you operationalize the prediction of autism, but given that framing, why is your predictive model predicting autism and not predicting function?
This is a great question. Actually, we are not going to limit. I've shown you two different kind of paths. One is for autism prediction, and the second was a persistent developmental delay. We are going to try and see whether it influences both, not just autistic child, but also child with a significant developmental delay. Totally agree with the question, I agree. And I think this is, and you'll see that we are not, this is the primary outcome. We are not going to only focus on primary outcome. There are other outcomes we are going to measure. But
Just to comment on this, I think it's a process. I mean, everybody was working on autism, yes or no, and seeing autism as a deficit aspect. So we are changing the way we are looking at autism. So that's why, I mean, the scales are still autism, yes or no, but we know, and that's really explained by Yair, that we are trying to get more into the outcome, and outcome not only by the neurotypical outcome, that could be other outcome.
Yeah, can I say one?
yeah, definitely.
So this is a partnership that we're doing with 5 ministries right now.
Yeah, I'll show it.
Okay. So I just wanted to say related to that, because the different ministries are also coming with different, different like goals in mind, right? So because it's a yes or no, Treasury, Finance Ministry, they care about not having so many people who diagnose as one, and if you have a scale, they can give them different because they give them financial support. And NII, like the Social Security Administration, care about it from something else, and so that's why I think it's really important point, like moving it, not thinking about it as a yes and no, and plus we know that so many people are so functioning and it's just what we want to do different things with them.
So, 4 different arms to this study. There will be 4 different arms for the study. One is individual aid, which is in the mainstream daycare. So it means that it is not going. It is an aid that will be given by a trained person, not a specialist, but just trained and someone who has been guided. Something which is already happening in Israel for children with an actual diagnosis. The second is a special daycare that will be built kind of in the same way we are building it for children with diagnosis of developmental delay or autism. The third will be a parent-guided, a routine parent guidance within the well baby clinics that will be given by nurses or healthcare professionals in development. And the fourth is treatment as usual. And we will examine, here it is, the primary outcome is an adaptive functioning. For those who are familiar with it, it is ABAS. This is a scale we are using in development for evaluating functioning. But we are going to also evaluate cognitive language growth. We are going to evaluate autistic symptoms, EDOS, for those of you who are familiar with it, and this is Bailey and WIPSI. And we are going to evaluate family quality of life and to evaluate cost effectiveness. Because eventually you would like to go with something which is scalable. If you are going to say, okay, I need to give such and such, it is not only the amount of improvement you are going to see in functioning, it is also the amount of money you are going to invest in this kind of program in order to understand whether it is scalable or not. So this is the idea, and as Michalev said, this is collaboration between 5 different ministries together with a joint and run by Brookdale. And I'm totally curious whether we will see any kind of improvement in the functioning. So we are decoupling support from diagnosis, and which is very important. It is happening in some of the countries, but not in Israel. And the fact that it is not decoupled gives us the opportunity to do this. Is, we have only one chance to do this kind of study, because once you will do it, you won't be able to do it again. So using this model, we'll be able to run this kind of an RCT, and hopefully we'll find a validated, scalable, and economical intervention that will help children with neurodiversity, either autism or developmental delay. And I think that this is the last slide. Thank you.
So Yair was punctual enough to leave us a few minutes for questions. Thank you, much appreciated. And all of you that held back, this is the time.
To throw me,
whatever you need, this is the time to ask. Yes, please.
So some of your interventions seem like the parents might disagree. Like if you're saying to 1-year-old parents that you have some prediction model, but they don't necessarily believe your prediction model. If you just give them guidance, that's one thing. But if you're saying, no, you need to go to a special daycare now, I mean, I would assume they would say no, or at least a large fraction of them would say no, because,
Thank you for this question.
It's not like they're 3 years old and not talking, and then parents are worried. They're 1 year old and not talking.
Great question, and I think that this is why you should evaluate not only the effect of the intervention, but also the intention to treat. So if you'll see that, special daycare do much better, but only 10% of the population that I have asked them to join the RCT, this arm of the RCT, they will not take it, then you have a brilliant way of intervention, but it is not working in the real world. Intention to treat, yes.
Yeah, following on this, I think we have some experience about the families where there is already one child with autism, and so we are following the second child, but and in fact, the acceptance of the families is quite super high.
But they already have one child.
No. And also, so that was the experience of that. And then we show clearly that this intervention is not, if you're neurotypical, it's not a problem. I mean, it doesn't change so much the way you...
I would assume, at least depending on where you're from and what's your culture, people might not accept that.
Okay.
Intention to treat. This is the answer for that. And eventually, once they will refuse, you'll have to collect much more.
So we are in the same, I coordinate the R2D2 project where we have adolescent and adult. At the adolescents, what they tell us is that diagnosis was super important for them. And second, educate your parents.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we need to have a...
Maybe we'll do it in the next horizon, Thomas. The next horizon.
Exactly,
something we
Thomas.
Do you use in all those analysis and prediction models family relationship in the sense of if you have one child that is autistic and so on, the chance of having it, I mean, this type of better resolution in terms of the close family relation?
So family is very important in the sense of your chances for having developmental delay. We have seen, so I don't have all the information regarding each and every family. I do have information regarding the skills of the education of the parents, whether they are working or not, and whether they are married or not. And you can see that each and every of these facts influence dramatically your chances of being delayed, the child being delayed. So definitely they are truly, truly important. So for example, education, it is a kind of a resilient factor, while divorce is a risk factor, significant risk factor, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
I have an annoying question.
Yeah, annoying.
In the spirit of this, of the present car, have you checked for fairness issues in the model? Because we know there is, I won't say overdiagnosis, but definitely more attention to these issues from high socioeconomic status families, and you run the risk of your model picking up on these surrogates, and then those that are actually maybe more socially advantaged would take up all of this super precious. It's 1 year just to see you, Yair. You are the most precious person in the entire Israeli healthcare system. It's a year to see you, I think, in private, never mind public. So aren't you afraid of that? It will all go to those that just have more results.
So I'll answer in two directions. First, yes. So KI, I'm not a data scientist who've done these prediction models, as you know. I'm working with KI, and they are truly kind of sensitive to fairness. So I think that we've answered that. On top of that, we are trying to, from another direction, to change policies. So we've just published last week a report regarding the way which of the populations in Israel are less diagnosed with a specific. For example, I didn't know that, and they've done a lot of noise in the Ministry of Finance, for example. I didn't know that Haredi Jewish are being diagnosed 2 years after the secular Jewish, and it is even worse than what is happening with the Arabic population in Israel. So we are trying to change these ideas. Once you will change them, it will affect the model, of course. But this is the real life. So at least if we know that there is something that is working. I'll say another thing which I think is very nice. Think about it. If you are doing this RCT, you can differentiate between the prediction model and the actual RCT. So if you'll find a tool which will improve the results of each and every child that is being designed to this kind of arm, then you can do it for children who are the brothers and sisters of a child with autism, for example, or can use a new model that Ran and Noah and you will do in Clalit, but it doesn't matter what kind of model you do in order to predict the risk. Once you have a risk, you'll be able to so the RCT is not connected directly to your model. You can change the models. Okay.
That's it. Questions, everyone? So I'd like to adjourn with
minutes to ask Yair additional questions at the break, and then we come back. Well done.
as usual.